Hello everyone, and welcome back to another R tutorial video. And in this video, we're going to begin our discussion on spatial data, talking about how we can actually bring spatial data, specifically in the form of a shapefile, into R. Now, we're going to be using R. This is the first time where we're coming across where we need to include another package. We did something similar with dplyr. We're going to have to include the package RGDOL. So again, you could do it in code with install.packages in library, but because we're using RStudio, we can use the package management tab. So what we need is RGDOL. You can see that I already have it installed. I will uncheck that. If you didn't have RGDOL installed, you'd have to click on install, type in RGDOL, and click install. I already have it, so I'm not going to bother installing it again. But what you need to do after you do that is you have to make sure that you click it so that the check mark appears checked, and it will say library, and it'll give you whatever stuff that it thinks you need to know. We don't need to worry about any of these. They're not important for what we're doing. So anyway, this is going to give us access to the function ReadOGR, which is the shape lets you read in a lot of different spatial data types, but we're going to use it for reading in shapefiles. And you'll see here that if we scroll up to the usage, you'll see that it has the first two parameters, DSN and layer. These are basically the only two that you're ever going to really want to worry about when you're reading in a shapefile. Verbose equals true you can mess around with if you want. That just changes the amount of information it spits out at you. Typically, I find it's kind of useful to keep as true because it gives you, again, more information so you can tell if something went wrong. But anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at what we need to do to actually use ReadOGR. So the first thing we have is this DSN parameter here. So I'm going to take a step back and just sort of explain that ReadOGR works differently from ReadCSV. And it's somewhat subtle differences, but hopefully when we walk through the example, you'll see the differences and you won't get confused. So let's go ahead and just look at, we have DSN and layer. So DSN is the path to the file that you want, and layer is the file name without the extension. So to show you what this looks like, we're going to go ahead, and I have a sample shapefile here called Georgia. This is actually the Georgia shapefile that comes with R. I wrote it out and I'm going to read it back in just to show you how this works. So we have this Georgia shapefile here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to call the function ReadOGR, but we're going to set it equal to a variable because we're reading something in, we want to store it. We're going to store it as the variable shape, or SHP. So we're going to use ReadOGR. And you'll see the contextual menu pops up. That's how we know we spelled everything right. We need DSN and we need layer. So DSN and layer. So again, DSN is going to be the path name to where we have the data stored. So in this case, it's going to be the folder on my desktop. And I just left-clicked, Control-C, Control-V to bring that into R. And if I put quotes around it, and then I fix the backslash issue, like so. That's all we need to do for that. Now, layer is where things can get a little bit tricky, and this is where I often make mistakes and where a lot of people make mistakes. Layer is the file name without the extension. So if we go back into our examples folder here, you'll see Georgia. So what we would do is we would just single click to get it to highlight just Georgia. Again, we do not want .shape. We do not want the file extension. And I know this is going to kind of seem counterintuitive, but what ReadOGR is going to do is it's going to actually interpret the sort of behind the scenes. It's going to interpret what Georgia we want based on the fact that we told it we want the layer Georgia and we told it where to look. It's going to sort of figure all the minutia out on its own. Because if you think about a shapefile, right, there's a lot of files that go into a shapefile, anywhere between 4 and 8, depending on what you have in the shapefile. And so just giving it the name of the layer you want, it will handle sort of assembling the rest of it. So if we run this, you'll see that it doesn't crash. Now, because we have verbose equals true, it gives us some information, and it says that we've read in 159 features with 14 fields. So, and you'll see up here, this is that environments tab that keeps track of everything we've read in. We've read in a data structure called shape, and you'll see that it's read in as a spatial polygons data frame. So I would encourage you to explore a little bit, but by and large, what happens with ReadOGR is it reads everything into a spatial something. If it's a polygon, it will be a spatial polygon. If it's a line, it will be a spatial line or a spatial polyline. And if it's points, it will be a spatial points. If the shapefile has an attribute table, it will append data frame on the end of it. So in this case, we have a polygon data set, and we also have an attribute table. So it's a spatial polygons data frame, which says we have some polygon data and some data frame data. So let's take a look at what this looks like under the hood. So we've got this. If we type in SHP, and then we type in the @ sign, this is important here. You'll see all the different things that make up this spatial polygons data frame data structure. Now, I'm not going to say they aren't all important and they don't all do things, but by and large, for this course, and when you're dealing with spatial data in R, you're basically going to be focusing mostly on this data. So shape at data. This is equivalent to a data frame. Right? If I were to type in dim of shape at data, and I were to run this line of code, you'll see that it is a data frame with 159 rows and 14 columns. We can do head of shape at data, and you'll see that we get what is a data frame. So the key thing here is we now have a data frame, and we can use this at data to manipulate the data, the attribute table of the shapefile as though it were a data frame. So all of the things we've learned about data frames, indexing, subsetting, all of those sort of tips and tricks will work on this at data, just like it was a data frame. So when you start to do regressions or anything like that, right, we can pull data out, manipulate data in exactly the same way. Hopefully this made sense. If any part of it did not, I would encourage you to go back, rewatch the parts you're confused about, especially paying attention to here with the layer not including .shp. If I were to put .shp here, the code would actually crash. So again, no file extension here. Hopefully that makes sense. Again, I encourage you to rewatch any parts you're confused about, and as always, please reach out. Thank you.